Hello, how's it going? I just wanted to send you a quick video on how to get this all set up, a little tutorial so that you're not confused and you don't make any mistakes and ruin anything on your first time out. First things first, you want to make sure that the O-ring is nice and clean, and then the little trench that it sits in is nice and clean. I do this before every session because if there's any debris or sand on the O-ring or in the trench or on the faceplate, it allows a possibility for water to get in. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure it's nice and clean every time. Next, you want to use this grease. I'm going to send this. It's a lubricant. And basically the only thing that that's used for is to keep the O-ring nice and lubricated. You do not want it drying out and cracking. The O-ring needs to stay in good condition. That helps it to stay in good condition. You don't want to use very much lubricant. Use as little as possible. You just want a thin coat on the O-ring, and that's it. Next, you want to make sure that your camera settings are all dialed in before you put it in the housing. There's no controls, there's no buttons that operate the menu. So once you put it in the housing, the settings are locked in. That's it. The only controls that you have, and I'll show you on the back afterwards, are going to be the aperture, the shutter speed, and then the ISO. You can also go through your media while it's in the housing, and you can take pictures, obviously, and then take video. That's it. So let's see. There's two settings that you want to make sure are dialed in, aside from your own personal settings. And those two settings are the viewfinder and monitor. You want to set it to monitor only. Because if it's on auto, it's going to automatically go to the viewfinder because it triggers the viewfinder once it's in the housing. Unless you want to do your whole session looking through the viewfinder only, then you can leave it. But if you actually want to use the monitor, which I prefer and I suggest, you need to set it to monitor only. Next is the sleep timer. Set it to 1 minute if it's not already, because you're going to have to leave your camera on once it's in the housing. If you have it in the off position, you have to take off the lid in order to turn it on and off. So you want to leave it on once you tighten it down. The sleep timer helps really well because once it goes into sleep mode, it doesn't use any battery life. So I've actually set it all up, tightened it down with it on and in sleep mode, and then gone to sleep, and then the next morning I went out for a session, it was still at 100%. So don't worry about the battery life for leaving it on. As long as it's in sleep mode, you're good. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this into the housing. First thing that you're gonna wanna do with this cord is plug it in, and then get this cable out of the way by just holding it down right here, and then dropping the camera in. I like to hold the lens with my right hand and then the cable with my left, and push the camera down towards the bottom so that you can get past those buttons on the top. Once you get in there, you just press it down in, make sure that it's up against the back of the housing just by pressing all four corners. Take the cord for the trigger, and you can just tuck it in here like that. Next is this spacer. Now, this used to be hot glued to the faceplate, but it came off, and it's not really a big deal. All you do is you just set it where it normally would go. It goes in the top right corner, the foam side down, and the divot side out towards the camera. So top right corner, it'll stay there, so you don't have to worry about it once you tighten it all down. That just prevents the camera from moving at all. It's already pretty snug in there, but if you hit the housing really hard on something while you're out there doing a session, the last thing you want to do is have to take it all apart because the camera got tweaked a tiny bit. So after that's all done, camera's on, settings are all set up, faceplate is on, go ahead and put the wing nuts on. Now, tighten these down all at the same time. Do not do one all the way, because if you do one all the way, you risk stripping the wing nut or damaging the wing nut or damaging the threads, because it could get cockeyed if you're doing all the pressure on one side. You want even pressure all the way around so that it doesn't tweak any of the bolts or screws. All right, so now that they're all on there, I'm gonna go ahead and just twist them evenly. Once you get it nice and tight, you're good to go. Now, I tighten these all the way, as tight as I can get them. That way, less sand can get into these cracks. It doesn't matter because it's not going to get past the O-ring, but it's just easier for cleaning out later. Once it's in there, you're good to go. You got your trigger. You can pull it down. There's a little click that you get to, and if you go all the way to the click, it focuses, and then after the click is where it takes the photos. So there you go. All right, and then I'll go through the buttons with you really quick. So that's the aperture dial. You can go ahead and spin that for aperture. This right here is the shutter dial. You can spin that for the shutter speed. And this right here is the ISO. So you can click on that to set your ISO. Now, this right here next to the shutter dial is gonna be your select button. So you can select. And then this right here is gonna be your media button for searching media. I don't have an SD card in there. Let's see, this one right here is going to be your focus, I believe. Yeah, focus area. And so you can change your focus and then select. I like to use wide. Sometimes center is cool, but this one right here is gonna be your video. I never used video. I always use a GoPro on top, so I don't have to worry about video with the camera. I always just take pictures with the camera. This right here is your manual capture button. So you can do your half press for focusing and full press for taking the shot. You don't really need that, but if you ever went out without the trigger, then that's what you would use. That's pretty much it. If you follow those steps, you shouldn't have a problem. I've used this a number of times using that same exact process, and it's worked like a charm every time. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. All right, thanks.